Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Anne Kemp, and I am the Employer Relationship Manager at BUSSQ Superfund. This morning we have a lot of old friends and old faces, or familiar faces, I shouldn't say old, in the room. So thank you for coming, and some new faces as well. And then welcome to our guests online. We have over 200 people registered for the webinar this morning as well. So a very warm welcome to everyone. This morning's event is being held on the traditional lands of the Turrbal people and the Agara people, and I wish to acknowledge them as traditional owners. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. A very special thank you to our guest speakers this morning from the Australian Taxation Office. We've got Gail Copley, Wang Vang and Blair Lachlan joining us, who are all experts in the area of stapling, and they're going to go through in detail with you what the changes will mean to you as a business and the practicalities of how it's going to work with you all as well. Just a little bit of housekeeping. The fire exits are located everywhere there's a green sign. Please follow the event staff if there's an emergency. Apparently there won't be an alarm. So yeah, run after me. And the toilets are located in the hallway outside as you came in. Just everything we're talking about here this morning is general information only. Please don't take any action on any of it without getting your own personal financial advice first. So at BUSSQ, we're really proud of the service that we provide to our members and to our employers, and we pride ourselves on keeping everyone up to date with any legislation that's coming through. So this year already, since the 1st of July, this financial year, we've had SG increase from 9.5% to 10%. We've had concessional contribution limits go up to 27,500 from 25, and non-concessional contributions increase to 110,000 from 100. And the SG rate's due to continue to increase each financial year going forward. So if you didn't already know that, that's something to keep in mind. Our goal is that as the trusted partner for our employers, through your dedicated account manager, that you will be up to date with all these changes and prepared in advance for them coming through. And we see stapling as quite a large change for employers in the way that you onboard your new staff. It's going to be quite an administrative burden for you potentially if you don't get that choice of fund form back. So we want you to know, as always, that BUSSQ is here to help. We're here to be part of your inductions, happy to give you flyers for your induction packs, happy to talk to your new employees and provide them with more information and guidance if that's what they need. And there's never really been a more vital time to partner with an industry fund that has your employees' best interests at the core of their business. So BUSSQ is an industry fund. We've been around for over 35 years, and we're really proud of the long-term returns we've been delivering for our members. So currently, since we first began, our year-on-year return is averaging at 9.71%. This is our team of relationship managers. So we have Yvonne, who looks after the Gold Coast region, many of you will know. Lizzie, who looks after Brisbane, South, Toowoomba and Central Queensland. The girls are all here in the room if you haven't met them. Chantal looks after Brisbane, North, Sunshine Coast and Wide Bay. And then Glenn, our North Queensland regional manager, is online. So good morning, Glenn. Some of the value adds we provide for our employers. Our goal is that all our members retire with dignity and retire happy. And we provide a number of services along the way for them to do that. So we've got, your dedicated account manager or relationship manager who will come out and perform workshops with the staff. We've got our barbecue bus where we do toolbox talks on site and at your premises. We'll come out and do financial fitness sessions. Our goal is to guide people all the way through their working life so at the end of it they can retire happy. We've got our Retire Happy seminars that are running all over the place at the moment. I think there's still 2 to go this year. So if you've got staff in that age group, encourage them to come along. It's a fantastic session. And one of the other services and products that we have, of course, is for our members is their insurance cover. And our insurer, BUSSQ's insurer, understands that we're primarily for the construction industry, and they provide insurance that covers all the relevant occupations within the construction industry. And this is something with regards to stapling and the advent of stapling that can potentially impact your new employees coming to work for you. So if they've had a first job and they may have a super fund, you know, that's for the retail industry or for hospitality, and then starting in construction, they may not have the relevant insurance cover for the occupation that they're doing now. So that's somewhere where BUSSQ can help. We're happy to come out and be involved in induction talks to explain to them what we offer in the way of insurance. We do have special cover for young people as well. And it has been raised as a concern. You may have seen it in some industry publications if you read them, because a number of the industry bodies are concerned about the lack of the right insurance for young people that are working in our industry. So it's something to keep in mind as you hire new staff. The other thing is that BUSSQ members do have access to straightforward financial advice about their super. So if you are a member of BUSSQ, you can speak to one of the planners and get some advice around your insurance cover, if it's adequate, if you've got the right amount of cover for you, if you're investing in the right investment options for your age and timeline to retirement. And the other thing is, if you're wanting to put extra money into your super, you know, what's right for you. So they're the advice options that we can help your staff with, or if you're a member yourself, of course, you can take advantage of that. But there's a great opportunity for you as an employer to engage your new employees as you onboard them, to have this explained to them, and so that they understand the offering from your default fund, which is hopefully BUSSQ, and especially around the insurances and the ancillary services that are offered by that fund. So super is quite a large payment that, you know, when you look at what you pay your staff, it's quite a big part of the package that you pay to them. So it's a great opportunity for you to engage your employees into thinking about their future and their insurance and making sure that they're in the right fund. Some of the documents that we can help you with when you're onboarding your new staff, if you're including super information in your induction packs, the choice of fund form, you still use that nominating your default fund, an induction flyer. So whether you do this in paper format, we can help you with kits, or whether you do it electronically, we can provide you with the PDFs. Induction flyer explaining a little bit about BUSSQ as your default fund, the product disclosure statement, and we've got a really great flyer for young people in particular that covers super for when you're starting out, that helps them understand it and explains it a little bit. So I'm about to hand over to the lovely people from the ATO. Can I please ask that in your packs there's a survey. At the close of today's presentation, we would like everyone to complete the survey to go into a draw to win a $50 gift voucher. So whether you're in the room here or you're online, we ask that you would please complete the survey, and we will draw the winner later today, and we'll let you know who that is and make sure we get your prize to you. Just please remember again that BUSSQ is an industry fund. We are here to look after you and your employees. We see this event as a great value add that we're able to deliver to you in conjunction with the ATO this morning. So thank you so much for coming and doing this for our employers. And feel free to reach out later. The relationship managers are all here in the room. If you want to organise a toolbox talk with our barbecue bus, or host a financial fitness session for your staff so they can make sure their super is on track. All right, over to you, Gail. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and And thank you. Thank you very much to BUSSQ Super for putting on this event. It's a fantastic opportunity for us to get out and talk to clients and employers. My name is Gail Hopley. I'm an Assistant Commissioner at the Australian Taxation Office, and my role in the Your Future, Your Super measure, or part of my role in that reform, is the bulk solution that we'd like to offer employers where they might be onboarding a large number of employees. So that's the part of my team and my world. In particular, we will be talking a lot about the stapling component of the Your Future, Your Super measure. There was 4 components that the government announced in this measure, but we'd like to focus on that today and touch very briefly at the start on the comparison tool as well. The PowerPoint presentation will be made available to everybody electronically or by paper, so welcome to take notes, but we will provide that to you. And there will be an opportunity to ask questions. Please do. Feedback is a gift for us, and we really value what you have to say in terms of how we co-design administrative solutions. So as you would be aware, or may not be, this reform was announced as part of the 2020 budget. It did not receive royal assent until the 22nd of June this year. The stapling solution was supposed to start on the 1st of July, and it was delayed until the 1st of November. That gave us, as a big administrative organisation, a very short runway to design and very little consultation with employees. So opportunities like this, and particularly thank you to BUSSQ, are really welcome. It's a great way to get out and talk to employers and help employers understand what you need to do to comply with this new administrative obligation. So we don't take it for granted that we're here today, and would love to hear your questions. I would like to introduce you to our 2 speakers today that will take you through the pack. My colleagues to the left, first of all, Blair Lachlan. Blair will cover briefly the comparison tool and take you through that. And then Wah Vang will cover the bulk stapling request, which hopefully also generate a lot of questions. Together, the gentlemen have over 15 years of experience implementing super reform and design. So they certainly are not short of been there, done it, made mistakes, trying to improve the client experience for the employers and make it as streamlined as possible. There are going to be 2 parts to that stapling reform, which you'll see, and my part in the bulk solution is a temporary one until eventually we can automate that for employers down the track, is the end goal. So thank you again, Anne, and everybody for turning up. It's just such a beautiful day. It's a great venue, and I'm really grateful to sort of be able to get together. I think of our New South Wales and Victorian counterparts who are having a pretty hard time of the pandemic, but it's great to be out. So without further ado, Blair, I might welcome you up to cover the comparison tool, and then we'll just roll over to Wah.
Hi, my name's Blair Lachlan. I'm a member of the project team that's administering this new government measure. As Gail said, the measure was part of the 2021 budget package to make sure super delivers the better outcomes for its members. And there are 4 sort of key components to this measure. And we're focusing on 2 of those today, but the first 2 is the best financial interest duty for trustees. And this increases the transparency and accountability of how a superannuation fund uses members' savings. The underperformance assessment measure is number 2, and that's an annual assessment that APRA does on all MySuper super products. And the first of those assessments was done on the 31st of August this year. The third component is the Your Super comparison tool, which went live on the 1st of July this year. And it gives an individual access to simple, clear information about MySuper products so that they can compare them. And there's information in there around fees, net returns and performance. Things like insurance and other ancillary features, as you mentioned earlier, are accessible via a fund's website. The fourth component is the employer request stapled fund service, which Wah will cover in detail. And then introduces this new concept from 1 November, which is the stapled super fund. So that's where you have an existing super account that an individual has, and that becomes linked or stapled to you when you move from job to job. And the aim here is to reduce fees so that new super accounts are not opened when an employee starts a new job and doesn't choose their own super fund. So I will now take you quickly through the comparison tool. Hands up who's used this new comparison tool, who's aware and who's used it? Just a few people? Yep, no worries. So, this is a great thing for people that, are not help people engage with their super. And at the moment we've seen about 500,000 hits on this service. And it's really easy to get to. You can just search for, My Super Comparison in Google, and you'll get access to that really quickly. So the tool has two modes. It has a personalised mode and it has an unauthenticated mode. So if you want to access the personalised or authenticated mode, you can access it via ATO Online through MyGov. And when you do that, it's tailored for you. It's tailored to your age and your super information. And whilst you're in there, you can then also, if you have multiple accounts and you're thinking about rolling them into BUSSQ obviously, then you can go through, use those same services or other services in ATO Online to do that. For those that prefer not to use ATO Online, they can still access the tool and you can customise the information on screen manually. So what we're looking at here is the authenticated version of this tool. Okay, so it was introduced, as I say, on the 31st of August. We had additional performance data come into the tool, so now we can understand how each of the different funds are performing. And if you have an underperforming fund, it's clearly identified as underperforming. And for those funds that are assessed as underperforming, their members will be directed to the comparison tool via a letter from their fund, as the funds were required to write to all of their members to say, you're currently in an underperforming MySuper product, go to the comparison tool, have a think about what your current position is with your super. So when you come into this authenticated view, it knows about who you are. So it knows your total super balance, what are the accounts that you hold, what are those individual balances, and also gives you information to help you understand how you get access to financial advice and more information about the product and the definitions on these screens, because we know that not a lot of people are, really engaged with their super, and some of this terminology can be difficult to come to terms with. So the data that's in the comparison tool is supplied by APRA due to those performance tests and all of the information that super funds report to APRA on a regular basis, and the data is updated quarterly. The performance test is an annual test, and there's also disclaimers on this product which ensures that people understand it is for informational purposes only and that people need to consider their own financial situations when reviewing the information in the tool. So the users, as I said, the user's age and super balance will be pre-populated if you come in through this authenticated version. If you just look it up on Google, it'll default to a balance of $50,000 and an individual can put in their age. And putting in the age is important because it helps you understand what are the different products available to you at that age, because super funds change their level of risk that they apply to different products based on your age. So it's important that you do use your age to understand what products are important or available to you now, and maybe what should you change to in the future if you are using the tool to decide on what super fund you have. So you can view all of the products at once as well. You can then filter it, sort it based on what information is important to you. The default order when you do open the comparison tool is it's based on fees, lowest fees, and then to highest net return. All underperforming products are always pushed down to the bottom, but you can search for those underperforming products by filtering the screens. The comparison tool has 80 MySuper products in it at the moment, and an individual can select up to 4 products and compare them side by side to understand, well, what do they want to do, how do those things work for them, and what's the best option available to them. So when someone does that, they get access to this screen, which effectively shows, based on the age and the balance that they input, and for the funds they've selected, how do they compare side by side. And if someone wants to understand more about that information, to understand what sort of insurance does that product have, what are the other ancillary features that the product has, you know, what are the other pieces of information that they need to know about and what's important to them. They can click on these product detail buttons at the bottom of the screen, and that will take you off to either the fund's website or the product disclosure statement so you can get more information. Okay, so that is just a very quick summary of the comparison tool. I encourage you to go have a look at it. It's a great product. And I will now hand over to Wah to take us to requesting stapled service.
Thank you, Blair. So I guess before I start, I did want to, ask you a few questions and get a show of hand. If you work in payroll, if you could put your hand up. Oh, great. And do the majority of you, interact with the ATO via online services? So, online services of business. Can I get another show of hands? Oh, great. So that's good. Oh, it's all right. Sorry, a bit short. All right. So currently, when an employee, so we're on stapling now. So currently, when an employee doesn't choose a super fund, but is eligible to do so, an employee can satisfy choice of fund rules by making super payments to their employer-nominated or default super fund. So from 1 November 2021, when an employee doesn't choose a super fund, most employers will now have to use ATO Online Services to check if the employee has an existing super account. This is otherwise known as the stapled super fund, and that is where super guarantee payments can be made to. So requirements for what can be a stapled super fund are set out in the regulations. So generally a fund must be a complying fund and is able to accept contributions. So I will note that any fund, including a defined benefit fund, can be provided to an employer by the ATO as a stapled fund. However, we know that some defined benefit accounts may not be able to accept contributions from all employers. So if an employer advises us that a stapled fund, which we've notified them of, cannot accept contributions, we'll then look to provide an alternate stapled fund. Now, if an employee has multiple super accounts, only one will be returned as determined by tiebreaker rules, which are also set out in the regulations. Only if the ATO advises the employee that the employee has no stapled fund, can the employer then satisfy choice of fund rules if they make contributions to a default fund. So with the stapling, it will be delivered in two phases. So the first phase is what we term as retail, and that's through our online services. And the second phase is a wholesale, and which is a voluntary basis. So we have begun engagement with digital service providers on this front. So this slide here, what this slide covers is more of a high-level overview of the process. So what needs to occur under the new rules and how the ATO will actually deliver the solution. So when a new employee begins work, so if the employee is eligible for choice and choice is received, no further action is required from an employer. So SG contributions can then be made to the nominated super fund. However, where no choice is received or choice is not an option, the new stapled super fund process will kick in. And so the requirement to request a stapled super fund generally applies to employees who are eligible to make a choice but don't. However, we know that there are certain employees that you don't need to offer a choice to, but you may still need to actually request a stapled super fund. So this includes employees who are covered by an enterprise agreement or workplace determination made before 1 January 2021, or temporary resident employees. So in terms of the choice of fund rules for employees covered by EBAs, this really depends on whether the agreement was made before or after 1 January 2021, and whether an employee commences on before or from 1 November 2021. So for employees who commence on or after 1 November 2021 that are under an agreement made before 1 January 2021, an employer does not have to offer choice, but they will need to request a stapled super fund. And so if the outcome of the request is that the employee has a stapled fund, then SG contributions are to be paid into that fund. Alternatively, if the outcome of the request is that the employee does not have a stapled super fund, then you can pay to the fund specified in your agreement. We do know that there are some EBAs that may have the option of more than one fund, and so if you're not required to give a person a standard choice form, but you choose to do so, and the employee chooses one of the funds listed in the enterprise agreement, that is the employee's choice, and therefore, as an employer, you would not need to request a stapled fund. So to just kind of bring back that to the front of it. So to kind of go back to that is that choice is really king. So in the instances where you have choice, and you receive that, then there's no requirement to actually undertake a request. So moving on from that, the alternate scenario is where an employee is engaged on or after 1 November under an agreement made on or after 1 January 2021. So the employer must offer a choice of fund. And so if the employer does not make a choice and does not provide that to the employer, sorry, I'll just go back. So if the employer does not make a choice, the employer must then request a stapled fund. So it's only then if we notify you that there is no stapled fund that you can then make SG contributions in accordance with the EBA. So there are also other ways under Section 32C of the Superannuation Guarantee Administration Act of 1992 that an employer will be able to meet the choice of fund obligations without needing to request a stapled fund. And so to go back to this slides, to undertake a request for a stapled fund, an employer, as I mentioned before, will need to come onto AT Online Services and request a stapled fund using our online form. And so what I'll do is I'll table that in the next couple of slides. So the online services is available for the majority of employers, and that also includes anyone who operates on behalf of an employer within that online space. So we talk about authorised users, cross-entity authorisations, and also tax and BUSS agents that have online services for agents. And that also includes payroll service providers. They can all undertake a request given the right authorisation has been provided. So again, the channels available are online services for business, ATO Online for individuals. That's focused predominantly on employers who don't have access to online services for business. And then you've got online services for agents, for tax and BUSS agents. Now, we do know that not everyone has access to online. So our preference is that our employers do interact with us online. But where you're not able to access our online channels, ATO staff can action these requests over the phone. However, that process will be a little bit slower. In addition to that, so requests can actually occur in two ways. So through the online space, through the online space, that is a single request, and also we've got a bulk option as well. So I'll touch on the bulk a little bit later. So upon receiving a request, what the ATO systems will apply the regulation rules that are set out in the legislation against super fund data that's held for an individual. And what that will do is that will determine what the stapled super fund is. So the outcome of each request will be displayed online. So if you come in through online services for business, submit a request, the outcome will actually be displayed online for you. So in terms of individuals, so employees don't need to take any action, but we will be notifying individuals and employees when an employer undertakes a request for their stapled fund. This can occur in many ways. So the first thing we'll do is we'll send them an SMS if they've got a number that's on record. Alternatively, we'll send them a letter to their MyGov inbox, and if they don't have a MyGov inbox, we'll send them a letter. And so the intention of that is to notify individuals, that notify individuals, and also give them a little bit of confidence that, we're actually looking at the process, and we understand that, employees may need their information, and keeping them up to date with, what's actually happening with their accounts. So what we'll also be doing is, communicating with individuals more broadly, and so aiming to educate them about, why and when an employee might actually request a stapled fund. So it's not, that big of a surprise when they do get that letter or that SMS to say, someone's actually requested your fund details. And so, to go to the last little piggy there, once a request has been returned, that's where the employer can then pay to the stapled fund provided. So I will note that even though you've made a stapled super fund request, individuals can continue to provide a subsequent choice form. So the following slides, set of slides that I'll go through, will show examples of what the request may look like, the request form may look like online. Unfortunately, due to the short time frame, we haven't been able to prepare an actual, virtual and, prototype that we can walk you through. So do please bear with, the slides being in the format that they are. So as I mentioned, the request service is only available through authenticated channels, so through the online space. So the user accessing the system must have a MyGov ID, and I'm sure many of you know that because you operate in that system, and also the appropriate authorization setup to be able to use the service. So to request an employee's super account, so the employee must navigate to the new employee screen via the ATO Online employees menu. And so as you can see there, on the menu bar, you hit employees, and then you'll be able to select the actual form. So one of the key rules about undertaking the request is that there must be an employer-employee relationship within the ATO systems. And this can be created in one of two ways. The first is lodgement of a TFN declaration, and the other is lodgement of an STP pay event. And so, as you can see on the screen there, once you arrive on the actual landing page, you can click on the request button, which will open up the form. And that's when you can start keying in the employee's details. And so this slide is actually the form itself. And so there are some mandatory fields that need to be provided for each request. So the first one is the employee's name. So that's given names and also the last name. You've also got the employee tax file number and the date of birth. So we do know that there are circumstances where tax file numbers aren't provided or unable to be provided. So it is possible to enter an exemption code where the employee's TFN isn't available. So the exemption code, once used, will make the address fields mandatory. And the reason why we do that is for our client matching purposes. And so we haven't got them on screen there, the exemption codes, but when you're actually on this screen, you can look at the helper side text, and it will actually list all the available exemption codes that can be used. Alternatively, actually, a quick note is that if you do use an exemption code, the processing time will be a little bit longer, so up to a few minutes in comparison to potentially a few seconds. So with this slide here, we're focusing more on the declaration. And so once you've entered the employee's details, what you can then do is you can click on the declaration and then you can submit the form. And what that would do is that will actually take you back to the landing page, which you can see there. And that will actually, where it's actually showing the outcome of the request that you've submitted. The alternative is that if you've got more than one employee stapled fund request that you need to complete at the same time, what you can do is you can actually hit the more employees to request button. And what that will do is that won't bring you back to the landing page here. It will actually, take you to another form, a blank form where you can complete the details. And so once you've done all of that, you can uncheck the box, and that will then take you back to the landing page that will display the information. So as I said, after the request has been made, the results are shown. And so for APRA funds, what we will display is the fund ABN, the USI, and also the member account number. And we've made an attempt to display them up front. And so ideally, you can actually click on the little chevron or the little button there to expand the actual information. So there's more information about, such as the name of the super fund. But ideally, you've got the fund ABN USI member account number up there straight away. Alternatively, if the result is an SMSF, we don't display the full level of information due to increased privacy risk. So employers, unfortunately, will have to ask their employees for any additional information that they might require. And really, we've done this because, by nature, we would think it kind of rare that an employee with an SMSF would not be providing choice. So with this slide here, what it shows is what it would actually look like when you've got a form that's processing. So if you can see the green, the two on the bottom, that's actually when you've got an outcome, and the first record there is when you've submitted a request and it's still processing. And so that will happen in real time, and so the processing will flick over to an actual result in real time. So there's no requirement to refresh the page or anything like that. And so for this slide, what we're actually displaying here is what we call the filter functionality. So it's a capability that we've built into the actual form. And so if you can see there on the left, there are quite a few different requests that are actually displayed in what we call the history section of the form, of the landing page. And so you can use the filter functionality to actually, bring up and put into focus a specific request that's been submitted previously, or a number of requests. So you might use the date range to actually, bring up information. And so requests themselves will only be available within the history section for 6 months. So moving on from that, so what this slide is trying to display is, some of the different responses that an employer can actually receive when they've undertaken a request. So responses will be dependent on the information that's been provided, and also the information that we hold about an employee. So some responses will contain additional information. So for example, if we're unable to match an individual, so the details that have been provided haven't been able to be matched against a client within our client register, then we'll detail a little bit more about what the next steps are. So, I will make a note that we do have quite a high level of matching within our systems. So, we don't expect that unmatched results will occur as often. So, in addition, so as you can see there on the right side of the screen with the red text, so in the event of a unsuccessful response, the information is actually deliberately kept vague. And so, for example, again, if we're unable to match, we keep the information quite vague, and this is to stop any potential phishing attempts, or if an employee's information is restricted or protected information. So as I mentioned before, you can undertake the request as a single request or a bulk request. So what this slide is showing is the bulk requests. So I think Gail mentioned before that we recognise that it is a large impost on employers, especially if you have a lot of requests to undertake within a short period of time. Using the retail service may not be the best option. And so as a result of that, what we've done is to develop a bulk option and make it available for employers who may have 100 or more requests at a time. So the bulk option will require all the same inputs as an individual request, but will be in an Excel format. And so, and that can be uploaded to the ATO using secure mail or practice mail if it's been lodged by a tax or BAS agent on behalf of the employer. So the bulk request does have a serve standard of about 5 business days, and the bulk request itself is an XLSX file that can be downloaded from ato.gov.au. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to download the file, and then you can then complete the actual template. So the template has 3 tabs. The first tab is more about instructions, providing a little bit more information about what needs to happen, and also reiterates the steps that you need to take when you're on the online services, and how to actually submit the form. The second tab is the Your Details section, and that's where we require you to include the business name, the business tax file number or Australian business number, and also complete the applicable declaration. The last sheet is the employee details sheet, and so that's, like I said, that's replicated off the online, but just in a different format. And so we've got the TFN, you've also got the given the employees' names, their date of birth, and we will require a postal residential address indicator. So that's probably the only difference from the online screens, and then the address. And once more, the address, is not mandatory, but if you use a TFN exemption code, then the address will become mandatory. So once again, tax and BAS agents are able to lodge this bulk request on behalf of an employer, and if they do that, within the Your Details section, we'd ask that the agents, provide also their registered agent number and ABN, and also complete the applicable declaration. So once the file is completed, you can submit this through secure mail function within online services for business, or practice mail function within online services for agents. So once the file is assessed, you'll receive a response through the same channel used to submit the request. So if you send it through secure mail, that's the location that we'll be providing a response back to. And so in the response message, what we'll do is we'll confirm that the file, whether the file has been completed or whether it's been rejected. So for completed files, what we'll include is an output file, which will attach to the actual secure mail message, and that will detail the outcome for each employee record that's on the list. So with employee records, they can be processed or unprocessed. So for processed records, we'll detail some of the additional information, such as the super fund details, where it's applicable. And for unprocessed, we'll detail the reason why the record wasn't processed. And so to give you some examples of, why a record may not have been processed, look, it may have been, there may have been some mandatory fields that were missing, which has stopped us from being able to process the record. Or it might be a duplicate record of another record within the same template. So we're taking every attempt to, to filter through the data to make sure that, any duplicates are actually removed as well. In terms of rejected files, so when a bulk template is submitted, and if it is rejected, we will provide some reasons as to why that's happened, and give you some additional directions about what needs to actually happen, or what needs to change on the template before you resubmit it. So that is, stapling. I did want to cover off on a few other things. So this is probably, more focused on the individual aspect, but we did want to raise this. So what we've also done is, so this is in relation to the new employment screen within AT Online for individuals. And so this is where an employee can complete their Superchoice details. So this, what we're showing here is what it will actually look like from 1 November. So currently, if you go onto, the new employment screen, the employer's default super fund needs to be entered on the first page, so page 1 of the personal details screen. So from 1 November, all employee decisions in relation to superannuation will be on the one page. So updates are also being made to the Superchoice screen to provide information in relation to the stapled fund process. Stapled fund process that an employer will need to follow if choice is not provided by the employee. So we're currently finalising the details for this update. So the updated form will be available by 1 November 2021. And so the Your Future, Your Super measure did not really change the employer requirements under Section 32P of the SGAA 1992, or the employee requirements under Regulation 16 of the Superannuation Guarantee Regulations 2018. So as such, changes to the form itself are expected to be minimal, although we are looking to provide clarity about the required documentation section of the form as a result of some user feedback. So a number of changes are expected to the accompanying instructions as well, and that's in order to explain to employers and employees what may need to occur if choice is not exercised. So that brings me to the close, and I think I'll open it up now for any questions from the group. Oh, we've got one? Sorry.
So when an employee, just to kind of summarise, when an employee ends, you only have to do that request if they don't provide a super fund at the moment. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. So yeah.
Just if they haven't, if they're not providing one, then if you don't check the receipt.
Yeah, that's right. So to go back to the policy intent is that, when a new employee starts a new job, the intent is that, if they have an existing super fund and they haven't provided choice, then, the employer would may have to come to the ATO to request whether that employee actually has any super accounts. And so, yes, that's right. So
If they have a couple, then they get to choose which one of those they want to use. Is that correct?
No. So within the So within the regulations, the regulations detail a set of rules, what we call tiebreaker rules, and that is what we'll use to determine which fund will be returned to an employer when they're making a request. So you might have an employee who has, say, 4 super funds, and so we'll apply, the regulation rules against the fund information and the account information, and as a result of that, we'll then determine, this fund will be the stapled fund, and we'll return that one individual fund back to the employer. Oh yes.
Excuse me, will you be advising those people which funds have been stapled so that they're aware? Is that going to go out separately?
Yep, so I'll just repeat that question. So whether we'll be advising the individual what fund has been stapled? Yes, we will. So as part of keeping individuals and employees informed about when a request has been made, as I mentioned, we'll send them an SMS and we'll also send them a letter detailing which employer made the request, and also which fund we've actually provided, if we have provided one.
So on my forms, for example, we've got, they can choose their super fund or choose mine as a default. What happens if they choose mine for a default, but they're one of these people that have, all different sort of supers? They still choose that, then they go with mine. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, so just to repeat that, it's if you've got a form and they can choose their they can make a super choice, and they've also got the option of default. So if they pick default, so that's fine. So default is a choice, and so if they pick default, then there's no requirement for an employer to come back and actually undertake a request.
Okay,
Yep.
well, it's only if they don't pick default, then you have to go in and, check what super they have.
I just want to clarify.
Oh, yeah.
If they choose online and they don't provide the choice swap to the employer, what happens?
If they choose online,
Yeah, and they don't provide it to the employer,
online as in.
they tell online. How they have to request level fund and that choice.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so what my colleagues just, sorry, I'll get to the question. What my colleagues just added onto that is that, so there are times when an employee might actually complete a super choice within AT Online for individuals. And so generally the practice there is that they'll complete that super choice and they'll have to print that out and provide it to the employer. And so there may be instances where they don't. So, if you don't get a choice and you request a stapled fund for that employee, what will actually happen is that choice that's been recorded in our systems will actually be returned. So it's almost the same as, they've given that to you, but we're just doing it through a different channel. But again, it only happens if they've actually come on to AT Online for individuals. And so, in those instances, we've got the data there ready to be provided back. Sorry, there was a lady, yeah.
Sorry, I've just got a question. Before you said there needs to be the employer
prior to going to your stapled fund. 9 times out of 10, a pay run is already completed, and that's how we get send our STP file to show you that it's an employee-employer relationship. So are we not going to pay super for the first fortnight and then retrospectively pay that whilst we wait for the ATO to respond to our bulk upload?
So I'll repeat that. So because of the way payroll's been set up, you know, the requirement for an employee-employer relationship obviously has an impact on that. And you're saying that, you know, do you then have to not pay super for the first, you know, first fortnight and then retrospectively pay that at a later time? So this is something that we're continuing to work through in terms of the employee-employer relationship. I guess, you know, as ATO officers are subject to, you know, strict obligations to protect the confidentiality of taxpayer affairs and also their information. And so, you know, this is set out in, you know, Division 355, the Schedule 1 of the Taxation Administration Act. And so to go back to that question,
Can I just add a point?
yeah, feel free to add a point.
No,
Yeah.
No, it was just on the. So it's just on the component of whether or not you have to pay the super at the time of your payroll, right?
Yeah.
So if you're paying SG on a quarterly basis, then, you know, it depends on when your product does that, right? So unfortunately, if you have a payroll system that initiates and will pay SG at the time of the payroll, then if you don't have a choice from the individual, you will have to request a stapled fund. And to create that relationship, as you say, a TFN, we need to have that set up, and that's our trusted relationship, as Wale was saying. And therefore, you will have to provide that TFN declaration to the ATO or have an event that creates that relationship before we can request a stapled fund.
Yeah, so we have to run the pay run event prior to having that
Yeah.
employee relationship to be able to staple them.
So TFN declarations can come through online services for business. We receive them in paper. There's other formats. We're also looking at other options to achieve that. But yes, the relationship has to exist before you can request. Otherwise, it will just be rejected and you'll be told, create the relationship. So you end up in a bit of a loop there. So we understand there are timing constraints and different products have different solutions they're working through to you know, provide that TFN declaration early in the onboarding process so that they can request a stapled fund if a choice isn't provided. Okay. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, no, thank you, Blair. You had a question?
It was just really related to the Superchoice form
Yep.
and collecting the employee's choice of super fund. Does that have to be collected via that form, or can we, because we use a HR tool and we sort of automate a lot of the collection of information, does that form, that physical form, actually have to be received by the employee and filled out by the employee? Or is it just the process of collecting the information?
Yeah, so I'll repeat that. So it's in relation to Superchoice form and whether you have to physically collect that form or whether it can be in a virtual environment. So I'm not entirely cross Superchoice, but I'm happy to take that on notice and get back to you. Or you've got it? Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so it's a big project and we've all got chunks that we're well aware of. So the choice form is an approved form. Okay, so there are instruments that describe how the virtual form or a paper product is to be collected. As long as your processes align with that instrument of approval, then you will be covered, that you can effectively collect the information in that that aligns with that instrument of approval, hold that information for as long as it specifies you have to, and then, you know, you're following the right process.
How do I just collect that instrument of approval information?
So if you just go online and just look for choice instrument of approval, and it'll take you to the ATO websites that give you that information. Effectively, it's just, in summary, it'll be saying, if you look at the paper choice form, if your virtual version has all the same elements of that, has the same disclosures, information that's required, and you collect it virtually and store it, and we can come and look for it if we wanted it, you'll be covered in general. Thanks.
Yes.
If a My Super fund fails the test, the yearly test, is that still going to be an option for a default fund for employees, or will that be something that's removed as a default for them?
You got yeah.
Sorry, tag team.
Yeah.
Tap me in. Okay, so you have to fail the test twice. So if a product fails twice, they can't accept new members.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, sorry. So the question was, if you've got a MySuper product that fails the performance test, so the first one was August this year, the second one will be again around 1st of September next year. So if you had a product that has already failed, and I think there's 13 that have failed, if next year one of those 13 products then fails again, they can no longer accept new members. There's no requirement for members to jump out of an underperforming MySuper product, and a lot of, we know that the funds are trying to explain to the members why they may be underperforming. It might be a blip in their process, or they might have good long-term investments, who knows. However, the fund is required to tell the employee, and the letter is pretty strong, and it says, you're currently in an underperforming fund, you may want to look at changing, it then puts them off to the comparison tool, as I said earlier, so you can have a look at your fund, how does it compare against other MySuper products, and to enable you to make decisions that are right for you. Does that answer that question?
So to answer the question, I think it was around, could you continue to use it as your default? So probably not, because they're not accepting new members.
Yeah, so if a fund, is underperforming, and it's continue to use as the default, they won't be able to accept new members. So even if you try to send them new members after 2 years of underperformance, the fund will have to reject those new members. So I don't believe the fund has to shut down. It just can't accept new members. Okay.
Yep.
In terms of that bulk lodgement by the secure mail, just clarify what the turnaround time was on that. I thought you might have mentioned that, but I didn't.
So just to repeat your question, is the bulk solution and what the turnaround time is through secure mail. So we've actually got, it's 5 business days, which is our standard turnaround time for that. Yep.
Okay. And the individual one was more or less live?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So the individual request is more or less live, and it can take a little bit more time if you've provided a TFN exemption code, and that's because the system will take a little bit longer just to match the client. Yeah. Yes.
Just in terms of time period between when an employee starts and if they don't know their super fund, do we have any time deadlines as to when we actually need to look up their staple fund? So when the whole thing about looking up a staple fund is when you don't get a response back. Is there a time period on that for us, or it's just before we obviously need to pay the super guarantee?
Yeah. So I'll repeat the question. Is that is there a time period between when the employee starts and when you need to undertake a request for a stapled fund, or whether it's when you actually need to make the super payment? Yeah. So it is the later. So it's when it comes time, but obviously it will change depending on how your onboarding processes operate. But generally, when it comes time to make that payment, and if you haven't then received a choice, if the employee has that opportunity to make a choice, then I think it's at that time that you would then have to undertake that request.
And I just wanted to say thank you very much. Look, the staple fund, we want to make it as easy as possible, like as streamlined as possible. So if 5 days is not working for you, let us know, or let BUSSQ Super know. I've got a couple of questions to ask for you, but really what the staple fund is about is just trying to reduce red tape. Too many super funds in this room. I don't know, do you guys have 1 or 2? Don't know, like making sure we have things so that people like BUSSQ can really do, great performance for Australia's retirement. 26% of Australia's working population, that's over 16 million people, have more than 2 accounts. 2% of that have more than 4 accounts. So I hold billions of dollars of unpaid super money that I want to get out there to your employees. To share the number, it's published in my annual report, it is just too much. So the purpose and the intent of the stapling part is to make sure that people, first of all, have choice, and then that we reduce the number of funds that people are holding through McDonald's, Woolworths, tradie, industry, engineer, whatever. So you just have those kind of things. So we're really grateful for that. And I have a couple of questions because I'm part of the bulk super fund. If you could come and tell me afterwards, like how many employees do you onboard at one time? So I'd love to know your most number that you employ and then your least, so that I can help out with the bulk solution. Really interested in that, and whether you have a specific time that you onboard your employees. Maybe you only do 1, 2, 3, but if you're onboarding 200 at a time, is it a seasonal thing in the industry or not? I'd just love any feedback. So thanks very much, Anne.
Some labour hire companies and things will
Yeah.
onboarding a lot at a time, so that's done.
That'd be
on that chat too. So thank you so much to everyone for coming this morning. I hope you found that interesting and useful and a value for you as an employer from BUSSQ. We couldn't be more thankful to the ATO speaking team and then for providing us with the experts, Gail, Wong and Blair. Thank you so much. Thank you to the BUSSQ team, Margie, Troy, Lee, Lizzie, Chantal and Yvonne for being here this morning as well, and to Mitch on the video. So if anyone has any further questions, we've had people sending some questions through online. Feel free to continue to send them to us or grab one of us this morning and let us know. We will work with the team to get together a frequently asked questions fact sheet after this event and get it out to everybody who's come along. We'll probably put it on our website as well, so the information will be on there for you. We've just run out of time for live questions this morning. So thank you all for coming. It will be here for a little bit if you want to hang around or chat to the staff from the ATO or grab some more morning tea. Thank you again.